Welcome, everybody, to New Book Tuesday on CPL Radio, the show that provides you with a reading list. Take some good notes, everybody. And we're all like librarians, and we're going to go around the room and have everyone introduce themselves, starting with...
Hi, I'm Gemma Lavender, and I work upstairs in the Adult Services Department.
I'm Heidi Griffin, and I work downstairs in the Children's Library.
Me too. I'm in the Children's Department. I'm Casey St. Clair.
I'm Jeff Mesterman, and I'm everywhere. I'm like a fungus. I'm all over this library. I'm just upstairs, downstairs. I've been on the roof a few times, too. All right, let's get things started and rolling. Your first recommendation, or maybe not, from Gemma.
Okay, my book this time that I brought to the table is Wellness by Nathan Hill. I think it was published autumn of 2023.
September, October, yeah, definitely.
So it's still pretty new. It's his second book. His first one was called The Nix, that had wide critical acclaim. This one, I didn't really know anything about it to start with, which was probably a good thing. It starts as a love story, and it's very soft-focus, romantic, set in the 1990s, where Jack and Elizabeth, the two main characters, meet in Chicago, and they are looking to escape their childhood neuroses and find someone, or at least find a meaning for life. And they see each other. It's a little creepy because they kind of first see each other through each other's windows that are very, very close together in the derelict apartment buildings that they happen to live in downtown Chicago. And so that's a little weird, but you still sort of go with it, and you still find the kind of sweet and poetry of their first meeting. And I suppose I was particularly liked it because it was my time span in life, which I think is the author's time. He's only like a couple of years younger than me. And so I feel that I was into the nostalgia of it as well. So I lent into it a little bit more than maybe other people of different generations. However, I think it was supposed to be this very romantic, poetic start. So that was lovely, and I was well in the little dream world of Jack and Elizabeth. And then a couple of chapters in, it jolts into 2014, and it really is a jolt, because then it becomes hugely satiric, and the characters become these people that you don't particularly like. And it's just a very odd transition. But then I kind of realized the style of the book mimics whatever the author is trying to do, true satire. So while he was doing the nostalgic poetic parts, it was in a very dreamy, lyrical kind of language. And then when he jolts it into 2014 and we meet the characters in a very dysfunctional marriage, dealing with hard parenting, social fads that are satirized. I mean, there's a hilarious bit where Jack, who's kind of a weedy man in the nicest sense. I mean, he's actually a lovely character, but he struggles physically, is desperately trying to, I suppose, get some attention from his wife by following some fitness fads. And he tries everything and he researches everything, and it doesn't work. His muscle gauges, or however he measures them, just doesn't make any difference, whichever way he goes, or whichever internet research he follows. So that was actually very funny. But but even though it's all jokey, and in some sense, it's also not very nice. And there are really some, like Elizabeth at the time is dealing with their son Toby, who's a very quiet child who has problems with social anxiety and fitting in, and just spends his whole time doing Minecraft. And we all have one of those. And that's that was quite traumatizing for me, because I have experience with trying to get my kids socially engaged. And so that is also hard to read. Like that whole point is hard to read. So it's a real contrast to the first bit, which
So
is
I've got to break in
nice.
here because I finished the we last time we talked, I was halfway through the book and I wound up finishing it via audio, which was really one of the few times I do that. And I psychologically know why I stopped and ran out of steam because I was found it nerve-wracking to see this mirror held up to me like that book, because you and I are in the same camp. I was there for the meat and potatoes of the 90s. I recognized so much of myself in this book. It was just, let's talk about jarring. To the point where I remember kind of like breaking out in a cold sweat for a few parts because I was like, because the relationship in there too, their quirks and foibles, I've done all of that.
Yeah,
so
it's
wild.
It's supposed to send up modern society. I mean, it's a modern satire. And it reminded me a bit of like Gulliver's Travels, where you have that same sense of awkwardness and hatred for yourself, which you're supposed to feel. And also for some of the fads that were going on in modern society. And so... it does make you very, very uncomfortable. And it's hard reading. And the other thing that it reminds me a little bit is if you've watched This Is Us on telly, the structure of it is like that. So it goes... So even though you go into the modern 2014, then you flip back to their childhoods and then you start understanding the characters way more from the flashbacks. And to some extent you like them more, and some extent you hate them more. So it's a very interesting structure.
I thought it was also interesting how, as they age, likability does start dropping away, and I'm like, oh, I better work twice as hard to be more like.
You are very likable, Jeff.
Well, thanks. But
we all
still,
love you here.
I was just recognizing way too much traits that I was like, oh, I've done that. Oh, I've said things like that. I've thought that way. Oh, God.
Yeah, so from a character point of view, it is...
They nail
is
it.
awkward.
Yeah.
However, then I also realized that the whole book was structured, because he's a very, very clever with mimicking what's going on with the style and his language and also the characters. But I understood that it was a book more like the internet and the World Wide Web.
Waiting for you to bring that up.
When it first started, I mean, there's a great passage, often too lengthy for, what Nathan Hill does. I mean, he's so clever, but he's also, he could have cut back.
It's
with
a
some
big
of the
book. I saw Kim
descriptions.
checking it out. It's thick.
Yeah, I mean, 75% of the explanations could be taken away, but then that's the whole point too, because you're supposed to follow these rabbit holes down just like you were screen scrolling. And that is also hard for your brain because you have to absorb so much because you're going through these different rabbit holes of whatever they're researching the characters or whatever Nathan Hill has researched to support the characters' stories. I mean, you go back to Elizabeth's childhood, which was founded on some horrendous, family history and corruption. And even to the point that you get citations and notes from those citations. So it's just like reading a webpage that you just keep following and following and following. So
I think it's length.
That's interesting.
I think it's length, though, and even some of its run-on feel at times. I think he wants you to really, this is these are lives, and I think he wants you to live in and with these people.
Absolutely.
And so, and wallow with them a little bit too. And so when you're in the middle of it, you're like, oh, get on with it. By the end, you're like, I'm glad that it was structured in this way.
Yeah.
I didn't like the ending much, though, I will say. I was
was
troubled by the ending.
I did have, so what else was I
sorry, I may have jumped you.
No,
launched you
that's
forward.
okay. No, I mean, I was going to end on the ending, which is sort of, a little bit traditional of me, but I am going to. I mean, the other main issue is the wellness. The title is ironic, obviously, and it's about the state of mental wellness, physical wellness, marital wellness, family wellness, relationship wellness, all that, which of course is not well. And there's also, it relates to Elizabeth's company that's organized around the placebo effect. And that whole idea reveals some of the story's revelations, which actually come at a point when you're almost, well, for me, about to give up with a book. And then you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. That's why it's done like this, and this is why I'm finding out about that. So that's very important. So I will say that. But I was kind of like bleary-eyed by that point. And then he sent that sort of nugget of a twist, and that led me to finish it. So without spoiling it for anyone, I thought the ending was worth getting to.
I thought it just fell off a little bit, though, and I didn't. I needed maybe, and I usually am not a big closure person.
Yeah.
But I think I needed a little more for this. With the long journey we were put on, I'm like, don't you want to give us some morsel of wisdom here? And I don't feel like we got one.
I thought it was enough. And I thought it was, I mean, without revealing it for anyone listening about whether it's happy or sad or satisfying or unsatisfying. I mean, obviously, I found it quite satisfying. Jeff does not find it satisfying. You know, whether it's a good resolution for the characters or not, I do think it was worth the effort.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that modern fiction, traditional modern fiction, actually, this is a very normal type of ending for most contemporary fiction now.
Yeah.
I had higher hopes for this one, I thought, because I really was enjoying it. I just thought, you almost stuck the landing and you missed the pad by about 5 feet for me. So, yeah.
I thought it was a good ending. I'm glad that it
maybe it couldn't have ended any other way.
Like
It's realistic. It's realistic. I mean, I didn't find it. I didn't not buy it. I just thought, I need a little more.
Well, I kind of liked the characters at the end. I didn't like them all, most of the way through, but I liked them at the end like I liked them at the start. And that was a kind of nice circle for me. But that might be a little bit cliche.
Yeah. I don't know, and I don't have any advice as to how they should have ended it. I mean, but at this, so cool. All right.
Well, I kind of started it maybe 4 stars, went down to 1 at one point, and then was probably with the, the amount of work and research and, intelligence involved, back at 5 stars at the end.
Nice. There we go.
There you go.
Truly a journey. Truly a journey. So, well, thank you, Gemma. It's always lovely to have you on our little soiree radio
nice
party.
To be here.
Absolutely. Let's move on over to Heidi. And what have you been reading?
Well, I decided to switch it up a little bit because I've brought way too many dead
wide
bodies, way too many.
A lot of dead teenagers from Heidi.
A lot of emotional heaviness.
Heavy topics. So, since being downstairs in the children's department and being the representative for the littles, I decided to bring a couple of picture books today.
Picture books on the radio. I'm not sure how that'll work, but we'll find out.
The topics are great.
Very good.
Of course. So the first one I have for you is What Happened to You? It's by James Catchpole. And this one here came out last year, but the reason I brought this one is because there's a new one coming out in April. It's called What Happened to You? And as you can see, there are 2 small children on the front of the cover. However, between the 2 children, there are 3 legs. Mm-hmm. So we have a little boy who is missing a leg. So Joe is at the playground in this book, and he is really, really tired of people asking him what happened to him. All he wants to do is be a pirate and fight crocodiles, and he just wants to have a good time.
Exactly what I wanted to like, by the way. He and I are on the same page.
And this book flows just like you would expect a little kid who has questions about someone who is different. And the questions he's being asked will make you chuckle, and it'll make you, have a lot of sympathy for Joe. But then as they move on, he meets Simone, and she realizes, hey, we're taking too much time asking these questions, and we're missing out on our playtime. Yeah. Why don't we just play?
I love a girl with focus and a mission.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when it's fun.
Yes. And Joe is just ecstatic. He just wants to be part of everyone else's fun. So they all play. And the best part is at the end, towards the end, Joe sits down with Simone and asks, so do you want to know what happened to me? And she is basically like, no, I don't care.
Oh, I like that.
So,
I like that.
Yes.
Yeah. So the one that's coming out in April is called You're So Amazing. And this time, Joe is tired of being told how amazing he is for doing normal things. And Simone makes a reoccurrence in this book as well.
Yay.
And he wants his friend to be acknowledged for all the amazing things that she does. So looking forward to that one.
Wow. I thought you said it wasn't going to be emotional this week.
Can you share the author picture in the back too?
Oh, yes. And the author, too, this is coming from personal experience because the author himself
Look at
has a prosthetic leg.
There we go.
So, yeah, it's very, very fun. Spoiler alert, though, all picture books have a soft meaning, the majority.
Absolutely.
But now we're just going to go a little weird because why not? This is me and I can't do everything, we just have to do something. So this one is called Pepper and Me. And on the front, you see a bent over little girl with bright orange hair looking at a blob on her knee.
In sort of a pastel crayon drawing.
Yes. Yeah. So this little blob on the knee is Pepper, and Pepper is a scab.
Oh, do they talk to each other?
So
into the mind of kids.
This is told in the perspective of the little girl, so we don't know her name, but she falls down and is very scared by the sight of blood and develops a scab. And she is very concerned about this scab and how long it's going to be there and how long it's going to take to go away. And he keeps being told that it's going to be there for a while. So she decides to name it. And she decides to name it Pepper after the dog she's never had. Okay. And that she wants so bad. And one day she hears a voice and it's Pepper. Pepper is talking to the little girl and is kind of upset that she named her Pepper and why she didn't name her something more fancy and pretty.
This is wild.
It
got critical acclaim. Sorry to jump in, Heidi.
Yeah, but I mean, reading this again is like being in the mind of a child.
You can never have enough friends.
Yeah,
right. So
even the scab on your leg.
Right.
I'm never bored.
And she at one point visits her grandparents and doesn't understand why they're not concerned about the scab on her leg. And then she thinks that, well, maybe because they're so old, they're just so used to seeing scabs all the time. But yeah, so we go through the life of the scab in this book and what happens after the life of the scab when the scab finally goes away. But it's
Is she distraught when Pepper disappears?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes and no. There is a happy ending.
If she were anything like my kids, she would have picked it and then kept it forever.
Oh, God.
I'm honestly surprised that there's no mention of a parent being like, leave it alone. Don't touch it.
We know. We've been down that road.
The mom is putting ointment on it and she talks about how it pulls when she walks. And I'm like, at that point, that's when it gets itchy and you just
it's gone.
Yeah. But it gets a little strange of what happens to Pepper.
I love it.
But
I love this.
Yeah, it's so good. I just laughed.
I definitely want to read it. Can I have a look at the illustrations?
Absolutely.
They need to adapt that to a CG animated DreamWorks or something. It should be a movie.
Yes.
And we have to get a good actor for Amy Poehler should voice Pepper.
Nice.
Kate McKinnon.
Absolutely, totally.
Weird Barbie.
Billie Eilish to the soundtrack. Well, cool.
It's beautiful.
I love it.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I wasn't expecting that one. All right, little David Lynch down the byways of the mind. So, thank you, Heidi. Let's, do we do a break here? I don't know. Do we have anything going on we want to mention at the library? We have Saturday morning cartoons coming up this weekend, although by the time this airs, that would have elapsed, but we're doing one more. So you want to talk about that a little bit there?
Sure. Yeah. Saturday morning cartoons. The first one is this Saturday from 10 to noon. Mm-hmm. Well, it happened in the past.
It will have happened in the past. We had a great time, and the cereal was delicious.
We are serving milk and cereal, and kids and families are welcome to come to the community room, and we are going to play 2 hours of classic Saturday morning cartoons curated by Jeff, including the Flintstones, Scooby-Doo.
Absolutely.
What else? Superheroes?
We're going to do a little Super Friends in there, and then, of course, a block of Looney Tunes, so Roadrunner, coyotes falling off cliffs, and
yes,
all the
dropping pianos.
All the stuff that makes life worth living.
Yes, so if you are a parent or a guardian guardian and you loved watching Saturday morning cartoons as a kid and want to pass that on to the next generation, come to
critical.
Saturday Morning Tunes.
All right. Monthly. So even though you may have missed this one, more to come.
Check our calendar.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you. Great. Casey, what do you got?
I have a historical fiction book, a young adult historical fiction called The Suffragist's Guide to the Antarctic by Yi-Shun Lee. And the premise is a young woman named Clara, and the year is 1914, and she is fighting for women's rights as part of a suffragist group in England. She originally lived in America with her mom and was inspired to hop across the pond and had means to do so because she was compelled by the suffragist movement in England. They were a lot more unified than the suffragist movement in the United States at that time. And she is a rebel rouser. Like, she was with the group and they were perpetrating technically acts of terrorism in the name of women's rights. They were marching down the streets. They were lighting things on fire. They were very gung-ho about women's right to vote and be a full participating member of society. So that's Clara's background. And since the year is 1914, the suffragist leader in the UK says, we're going to take a pause on pushing for women's rights because there's a war going on and we really need to support the men who are fighting for England. And she goes, heck no. She got really pissed off and she takes a turn in her life and she finds an advertisement that a ship is going down to the Antarctic and they are looking for crewmates, and she interviews and ends up going on a ship called the Resolute down to Antarctica. So the book is a Antarctic adventure, very similar to the Endurance ship and Ernest Shackleton's outing. And as a little kid, I was obsessed with Ernest Shackleton and the
Really?
Endurance. Yes.
How did that happen?
I don't know if they found parts of the ship when I was younger, and there was like a documentary
yes, I
on the
remember
History
that.
Channel.
You betcha. Yep,
I
yep,
also really loved the Titanic. So I was just enamored as a kid by reading those books and feeling the adventure. And I love snow to this day. So
Sorry about this winter.
I know, it was
Too
a little
much
bit
for
of a
you.
downer. So Clara is the only woman on this ship, and it gets stuck in the ice, and they have to disembark from the ship and set up camp. And as the only woman, she's been given tasks for someone who is smaller, and she's mending clothes, she's peeling potatoes, she's mending more clothes and doing some of the domestic tasks on the ship. And she really wants to get out there and be an explorer. Mm-hmm. So she begs and begs the captain if she can go hunting with the other crew members because they're running out of food. And in her past, she has gone hunting before with her mom. Her dad was absent and they were well-to-do. So her mom and her would go on hikes and go pheasant hunting and horseback ride. So she...
I'm beginning to understand why you like this book so much.
Yes.
This is actually written for you.
No horse riding.
Yes. So,
Penguins.
yes. So finally, the crew captain says, yeah, you can come hunting with us. And I highlighted a few passages, and they're going hunting for penguins because that is the only food source available to them in the Antarctic besides seals. My first hunt on the Antarctic. Surely it will be easier than shooting pheasant. Then, a little bit later, I began to understand that this would be a much bloodier affair when Thomas handed me the packing list for the hunt, including 14 cudgels, or I think clubs, and 2 rifles. And she goes, why are we only bringing 2 rifles? I thought we would be shooting the penguins. No, they have to club the penguins.
They're so cute. Don't do it.
Because penguins are best subdued by a blow to the head. That's what the captain says. So Clara is introduced to living on the Antarctic and showing her, and she's like, I'm committed now. I've been begging to go on this hunt, and I have to club some penguins. Yep. Yep.
Truly an ethical dilemma.
And once they get into the crowd, she was like, the poop is so stinky. It made my eyes water. They can't use guns because the ammo is precious. And the captain said that the penguins are really dumb. So they were clubbing them and they just weren't catching on that they were getting clubbed.
This is a horror movie.
I would like to think that the smell of the poop may have made it easier to club them. You're like, I got to end this. To bring this all to an end.
But then their eyes are watering, so they can't see where they're going.
So she recounts, and her book is sort of like a diary entry, so it's very personal. All around me was a selection of half-dead penguins. Only one or two was truly dead. A good many more were twitching or moaning, and it was impossible to escape the fact of my ineptitude. She was brave and clubbed them, but not hard enough.
Oh my God.
But later that night, Clara says, penguin steaks do taste like chicken after all. They were delicious.
I feel better about everything now.
Yes. So I knew what I was getting into. I knew that animals might perish. I knew that things get rough after my experience watching the Shackleton documentaries. But to just read it with that much detail was like, whoa.
Yeah.
It was a different time, and there were probably a lot more penguins at that time, so maybe it was okay. I'm trying to rationalize this somehow.
I would like to say that after Casey read this book, the morning she was telling me about this book, my storytime theme was penguins.
Oh, jeez.
They like little cuddly ones.
And you cried through the entire story time. What's wrong with this, Heidi?
I walk into the kids department and there were little penguins everywhere because Heidi cut these little penguins out.
Did you take
Twitching. They were twitching.
And I didn't finish the book. I finished that passage the night before. And I go, Heidi, I got to tell you something. That I just read last night. And so,
yes, I thought maybe I should hand out clubs at story time.
yeah.
We'll practice. This will be just a practice round. Oh, my. Wow. Well, it sounds like you had a good time anyway.
It was a really good book.
There we go.
And story time was great as well.
So is it a YA
Yes.
book? It is,
But I
yeah.
think it would appeal to all ages.
Yeah.
And the author is really talented. The historical accuracy of the dialogue was amazing.
Nice.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, since we're already wallowing in death, it's time for Jeff to bring...
Waddling in death.
Waddling in death. Oh, waka waka. I feel like dad jokes are rubbing off on everybody. I love it. I've corrupted everybody in this room. As frequent listeners of the show may know, I do like to dip a toe in the less than legal side of things. I love a good crime book. It's not just mystery. I like mysteries, but I like the ones that are just, really getting down and dirty with the criminals, and hopefully with a sense of humor. I like funny crime books because most of the time criminals are morons. And so I guess we found my genre, reading about idiots. So it takes one to know one. What I have this time is book 5 in a series by expert mystery and crime writer Lee Goldberg. This guy has been around forever, a good 20, 30 years, I would say. He actually did a lot of work in television. He's not one of the creators, but he wrote the lion's share of episodes of Monk, which is a fantastic show. And, excuse me, he did, he got his start on Murder, She Wrote, I believe. And really, if it's a crime show or a mystery show, Lee Goldberg has his fingers somewhere in it. He's just a very prolific TV writer, and it's bled over into fiction. And the book I have today has to be his 60th or 70th book. I mean, he just cranks these things out. And sometimes when you have an author like that who cranks them out, they get a little creaky after a while. No, Goldberg this guy is like a grandmaster of the genre of crime writing, crime fiction, and he's worked with Janet Ivanovich on a few of her not her Stephanie Plum books, but a whole other series, and the guy's funny. He's actually really funny. So this book is called Dreamtown. It's book 5 in the unfortunately named Eve Ronin series. Eve is I thought the name Ronin was dopey because a Ronin is a masterless samurai. For those of you who don't, there was a movie called Ronin with with Robert De Niro back in the 90s, and so 90s during the time of during the time of wellness.
Yes.
So I thought the name was dopey. They do that sometimes. These crime writers just get real kind of overly pulpy. I would have liked Eve Schwartz or something. I would have found more believable.
You really have a thing with names.
I do. I really and actually it makes me crazy. It makes it really hard for me to read books like this when you have this like comic book one-dimensional names that are supposed to a name that will reveal character. I'm like, why don't you just try revealing their character instead of like these, little, life hacks. So I know, it's a total pet peeve, and I guess I've outed myself as that. A little fussy about this, aren't I? Anyway, so Eve Ronan, but to his credit, it's a great character. She complains constantly. She's the youngest. She's one of the youngest homicide detectives in the L.A. County Sheriff's Department. Total hotshot. I mean, she's like a female Tom Cruise. She just walks in the scene and just takes over everything, thus making her, by her peers and basically everyone detests her. She's not very likable, and her unlikability made her extremely likable to me. So she does stuff that I wish I could do. Anyway, this particular book, she's still kind of coming off of a case where really kind of made her bones in that she cracks this it was just a real action-packed case. And in this book, they're actually converting her case to not a reality show, but like kind of like 48 Hours where they'll do like dramatic recreations of crimes. And so they're doing that with her case. And so, of course, she's now doubly hated by the LA Sheriff's Department because she's getting a lot of attention. And she has a partner named Duncan Pavone. But Duncan has
another weird name.
Yeah, that one I didn't mind as much because actually he turned it into a pun because his nickname is Donuts. So he's Duncan Donuts Pavone. He's a big boy. He's a big guy, and he loves food. So, of course, I glommed onto him immediately. And he and Eve don't exactly get along ever. There seems to be some mutual respect there, but they don't really like each other. On the surface, they don't like each other. So this is a really complicated book. There's a lot going on. They find in a shallow grave outside of a gated community, very wealthy gated community. They find bones. They find corpses of two guys. At the same time, those are found on another reality show, a real Kardashian-ish type show. A woman named Kitty Winslow, who is like the daughter of this very wealthy family. She's found dead, and it's in the middle of a season of a reality show. So now the reality show almost becomes a reality crime show. And then we're actually also dealing with, by the middle of the book, the Chilean mafia shows up at some point, and they are also kind of tied into all this. So you've got reality shows going on everywhere. There's a lot of subplots, and what's great about it, I love detectives. I haven't read book 1 through 4 of this. I just picked this up on a whim because I was like,
that is so chaotic.
It's total chaos, and it's all set in L.A., and L.A. is just melting down everywhere. Everyone's corrupt. Everyone's stabbing each other in the back. Our heroine or hero or whatever, she's kind of a mess. I mean, she's constantly whining. I loved every minute of it.
Nice.
I had so much fun with this book. It's a short read. I'll give you a little sample of the prose, and then you can make a decision for yourself if this is somewhere you want to go. This is the beginning of chapter 6. The dirt. This is after they find the bodies, the bones buried in like the Hollywood Hills type of area. The dirt had been dug away a few inches all around the male corpse, creating an earthen pedestal, which Eve noticed was slightly inclined, so the lower half of the body was closer to the surface than the rest. The corpse was wrapped like a burrito in a filthy blue tarp, which had become frayed at the bottom, as if an animal had clawed it apart, revealing some leg bones in shredded denims. A mummified head, some of the skull exposed to reveal a ragged hole in the brow, poked out of the top of the tarp. I'm going to flash forward a little bit. Daniel stood to greet the two detectives. What we have here is a corpse, not a skeleton. Eve could see that. Why isn't he, if he's been dead and buried for 2 years? Why? It's a street. The drought, recall dry soil sucks the fluids out of a body and essentially mummifies it. And this body was rolled in a tarp, which isn't porous, so all the fluid and organs were more contained. Lopez not in agreement. He's going to be gooey. So he won't want to open the tarp here.
He's gonna be gooey.
Duncan said, we deeply appreciate that. Nan said, we'll open it at the morgue so we're certain we can capture anything that spills out.
I'm more mortified than that you started a book 5 in a series. I can't get over that.
I have decided to do that more and more because some of these series go on forever, and my book critic Steve Donahue, friend, says it is not a good if you're on book 18 and a reader can't just come and pick it up, you have failed. And I like that. I like that idea because it's like, you know what, if you're gonna throw these giant series at us and say, well, you can't read my new book until you read the other 94. That's kind of a middle finger to readers. I'm like, I want to, in this book, I will say to Mr. Goldberg's credit, you can jump in whenever you want.
Right on. I'm thinking it more of a TV series moment where the story arc is probably contained within one of each book versus the story arc of a television show.
That's
is
exactly
spread
right.
out. Okay.
Yep, and it reads like television in some ways, and it's.
I'm feeling better.
Okay. I didn't want to make you too disquieting here, but
I think you can do that more with mysteries and crime.
Absolutely.
You
can pick up any Agatha Christie book and, you can grab, Murder on the Orient Express, which is like, number 13 in the Poirot series, and it's okay. I mean, you don't have to, all you need to know is he's fussy and has a ridiculous mustache, So
yeah, like the Murder in Marlowe. Is that the one you read? It was the second book, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can do it with that genre, but other books, maybe it's a little harder.
I wouldn't recommend reading like Catching Fire first or something. I started with, Deathly Hallows. Is that okay? That's problematic, definitely. But with mysteries, I think that's
good to know.
Yeah, so there we are. Well, this is a fun episode, man. We had some wild stuff today. This was great. We've been away, and I must apologize. We've been away for a while. Illness and various other things kept us from the microphones, and but that's it. We're done with all that stuff. Expect us back at our posts weekly. And thank you, Gemma. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Casey. And heck, thank you, me. All right, we'll see you next week, everybody. Have a wonderful reading week. Come see us. We're here all the time. Bye.
Uh-huh.